Today, I'll be reacting to this amazing subject.
I'm just as surprised to be talking about the Bean game as much as you are. As a topic on this channel, Fall Guys presents us with an interesting case study. I get to break down the current state of a game that, at one point, was once the most popular game on Twitch. For about 3 minutes.
I'm down here eating some furry's ass.
The rise and fall.
More like 2 hours. LOL, but FR, I don't want to be the nerd emoji, but it's like 11 days.
Of Fall Guys is a subgenre on YouTube with videos dating back 3 years ago. Jesus. I'm not here to regurgitate talking points regarding the decline in discussion and coverage of the game. Instead, I believe there are core issues rooted
This is just 21st century humor.
in the design of Fall Guys. I want to preface that when replaying the game for this video, I conclude that the overall package is of high quality. There was fun to be had. I just struggled to continue after my few hours playing the game. I've come up with a few explanations for why Fall Guys structurally didn't work to sustain its success. I'd like to begin with something oh so fun. Fall Guys moves at a snail's pace. The pacing of this game
That's literally the point.
is sluggish if you break it down. For one, the physics are designed so that the Bean characters slowly prance and waddle around. The player's actions are clunky, which, to be fair, is part of the game's charm and design. This isn't a fast-paced experience. I wouldn't mind this fact if it weren't for the excessive waiting during and between rounds. Don't believe me? You first have to load into a lobby.
The reason that is because you're going to talk
Then the
to your
first minigame
friends.
has to load.
It's not a
Then the camera
single-player
has to
game.
do its slow pan around the stage. Then the countdown timer happens, and now you reserve the right to play the game. No! Ultimately, if you happen to be an extremely experienced gamer like myself, you'll finish around early. Lucky for me, or anyone else who finishes early, we get to wait and watch everyone else awkwardly fumble and fight for the finish. I enjoy spectating the final round. The game can feel very tense in a good way, but when you're spectating the results of every round, it can feel rather monotonous. I get the joy of watching this guy be AFK. After the round, you see who's eliminated and start the whole process
If you play it enough like me, that feels normal.
again. When I've played with friends, this downtime isn't too bad, as we usually discuss what happened in the previous round or continue our conversation. However, even then, we'd still like to be playing the game more and not have our discussions carry our experience. To remedy the complaint I've just made, the team lowered the max player count from 60 to 40. I agree that the load time
That means it's less fun, and now it's 32, but we see you playing Knockout, so that means you fought God.
times and queuing are much faster with this change. But this does make the game feel much less chaotic in early rounds. Additionally, if you look at it from a different angle and do not take the developer's explanation, this change could have brewed from the Switch port or the game struggling to fill lobbies. It's not as fun or lighthearted of an answer, but I would believe both. The game may be slow, but even when playing around, it's not always exhilarating because I've seen this map tens of times before. There aren't enough minigames in the pool to keep things exciting. Fall Guys is often compared to Mario Party, as that series is known for the wacky minigames of each entry. Fall Guys' minigames are undoubtedly more involved and detailed than an average Mario Party minigame. Still, something that Mario Party has over Fall Guys is that, let's just take Mario Party Superstars as an example. This game has 100 minigames.
They're not even close, like what the skibbity. Okay, I'm letting Paper Bowser
Meaning if you
cook.
play a typical round of Mario Party with 10 turns, on average, it'll take you 10 games to get through all the mini games. Now, there's some variability in that. You may get a repeat through luck, and there are different types of mini games. Free-for-all, 1 versus 3, 2 versus 2. So in execution, you'll see repeats before 10 games are played. Though, the game does a good job shuffling in mini games you haven't played in a while. On top of this, the game isn't solely designed around the mini games, meaning you have breaks in between the action. Well, except for Mario Party at the top 100. But that was a stupid idea for a game anyway. I mention all this to say that Fall Guys doesn't have enough mini games in rotation to make the experience feel varied. Worse is
And guys, I'm not reacting to this full vid BTW.
that Mediatonic decided to start vaulting rounds. They based their decision on being able to rotate rounds in and out of the game. Now, I don't hate this idea. In theory, this approach alleviates the problem of Fall Guys getting stale, as Mediatonic can switch minigames in and out and curate the flow. That's a statement I would say if they followed up on that. Mediatonic doesn't really seem to vault consistently and unvault minigames, so what happened is that the game cut a whole bunch of its content, and Mediatonic occasionally decides to mix things up. When they announced vaulting, how many games did they take out? According to this Reddit post, 38 of the 81 minigames were removed. That's nearly 50% of the game's content taken out of the pool of options. And I guess the Fall
Reddit likes to lie, dog.
Guys community saw this coming as they immediately backlashed and started the hashtags unvault Fall Guys and save Fall Guys. The lack of minigame variety is one thing, but they also kinda really especially become predictable. You'd think they could take out some of the least popular games by
Button bashers is peak in myopian.
vaulting specific minigames. While this is true to a certain extent, I didn't encounter egg scramble or tail tag, but some of the games left were quite perplexing. It not only had to do with their quality, but their replayability. I'll give you an example of each. I've never been a big fan of Tiptoe. In theory, it's cool to decipher between the fake and real tiles,
risks.
but what ends up happening is nobody wants to be the sacrifice, so everyone bunches up
Take risks, my guy.
on one tile, and yep, is this fun? The survival minigames all fall into a similar trap. The current pool of players knows what they're doing, making these minigames drag. There's Block Party, which is
I totally agree.
fun
Block
on the
party
first
sucks.
few playthroughs, but uh-oh! It's the same pattern every time, even though it would be really easy to program in multiple variations of the same minigame. The wiki says there are multiple versions, but I kept getting the same pattern every time. And even worse case is big shots. Avoiding the objects the cannons shoot out is simple, and at least in one of my rounds, the game took so long that it ended itself because nobody was dying.
Just gain a skill issue. Just get bad. But yes, some rounds are way too
My
easy.
favorite example has got to be Blastlantis. And do you know why? Because I won by doing nothing. That's right, absolutely nothing. This is Luigi wins by doing absolutely nothing territory, but in Fall Guys. What ultimately happens is everybody in the lobby has played these minigames tens of times, and nobody dies. For these reasons, I dread or roll my eyes at many of these minigames. And because they've committed to vaulting minigames, I play these lesser experiences more often because there's a smaller pool of games to cycle through. Regarding the grievances I've just described, the long, drawn-out feel of rounds and tiresome minigames does not entirely ruin the game. The minigames are still pretty fun overall, and my natural competitive instinct drives me enough to want to come out victorious. But it is these pitfalls that hinder Fall Guys' longevity. One of the initial draws to Fall Guys was how it shook up the battle royale genre. No guns are to be found here. Instead, it was colorful beams versus the physics engine. I believe one of this game's most significant issues can be identified in this constantly changing minigame structure. Because of the different flavors of minigames, some of which are races, survival, memorization, team-based, etc., it creates a fragmented experience. Let's compare this to two other popular games, Fortnite and Among Us. Both games have a
Fortnite is not
consistent
even close to Fall Guys.
and overarching gameplay loop that is inherently fun. The updates introduced, added, and expanded to each game's main appeal. In Fortnite, the weekly update could be adding a new weapon that's added to the item pool. In Among Us, it's introducing roles to add variety and more customization to each round. Sure, Fortnite specifically has had drastic changes, but it's still a third-person shooter that ultimately centers around vanquishing all the other players. Fall Guys dips its toes into a vast array of playstyles, and I find
That's why we like it.
it divides people and their opinions. Some people think the race minigames are the best, while the stinky team-based minigames are the worst. Players who feel this way explain how you can be stuck with little children who do not know what they're doing, and a win or loss is out of your control. I think it's safe to say that anyone who has played Fall Guys encounters minigames that bring annoyance or frustration. Mediatonic has combated this by sometimes introducing more specific modes, like matches that only cycle through races or survival-based games. Nevertheless, these particular modes consequently emphasize seeing the same minigames over and over much more. I want to stay on this Fortnite comparison because I think it's an interesting connection. In 2021, Epic Games bought Mediatonic's parent company, Tonic Games Group. With this acquisition, Fall Guys is under the Epic Games reign. And, while I hate to say it, they copy and pasted the Fortnite model for the worse. They've added skill-based matchmaking, which I'm not here to say is good or bad. It's a bit of a hot-button topic, but it follows the trend of these competitive online multiplayer games. Fall Guys relaunched in June 2022 as free-to-play, which is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, making the game free undoubtedly makes the game accessible to a large audience. A side effect is that the free, large-scale live service games have oversaturated the market for years. When the game transitioned to being free, it earned revenue through the item shop, which is inoffensive as everything is cosmetic only. Maybe this statement I'm about to say is because I've become much more older and have grown stale of this genre, but I get tired of all these games pushing skins. Fall Guys has had skins from the beginning, but initially, the crowns earned from winning were the in-game currency with which to buy cosmetics. It added another level of incentive to win. In today's state, I feel no incentive to use my real-world money to buy skins, but that's probably just fatigue on my end. The May 2023 update added a level builder, which is similar to Fortnite's creative mode. When I heard about this inclusion, I thought it was cool, despite how most level builders are pretty limited and can't actually compete with officially made stages. It's a neat idea to share and play other people's stages. After that, they started putting custom maps into the pool of regular shows. Okay. Mediatonic threw in the towel and thought, we'll just have the community make the game
but some new levels are on par with official ones.
Aim for us! I'm sorry, but visually and technically, these stages will always be inferior in my mind. They can be quite janky. Don't get me wrong, there are some shining gems in the bunch. Custom maps used in rounds are generally more on the finely crafted side. There must only be so many well-designed custom stages because I kept seeing the same ones, so the variety issue isn't really resolved, is it? Recently, they fully launched the Discovery tab to find and play creator-made levels. There's a wide variety of different maps and categories, such as hangout areas or artistic showcases. Guys, what the hell is this? Who's gonna go, guys, jump into the Fall Guys hangout lobby I'm in. Kirby sits on a chair sprinkling random garbage through the map. I played a handful of these casual maps and didn't get the point. Worse is how Mediatonic increased the rate at which custom maps appear in matches. Now, I will credit them for recently reversing their decision by separating the officially made Mediatonic levels and custom matches.
Bowser, bye.